Oh no, we didn't.
Girl. Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
We did. Welcome back to Oh No Girl Yes, the podcast. Thank you for joining us. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share and comment. But let me tell you what we did that we didn't have no business doing. And we're going to rectify that today. If you listened to last week's episode or the episode previous to this one, if you haven't listened, we talked about the Psychology Today article about lonely single men. And we talked about it. We shared our thoughts. And guess what? One of our listeners left a comment and said, you need to have a man talking about this. And we said, oh, do you want to be the man? And he said, yes. So y'all, welcome to the podcast. Our guest, we're very excited to have Jared Tyus join us. Let's see. Jared, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being a listener. We do know that men listen to our show, and even though we have certain opinions, we don't think we're not a male bashing podcast. So I don't think. But you mentioned your comment was that you felt like we kind of reveled in the discovery of that Psychology Today. It was kind of like a I told you so vibe is what we had when we were talking about that.
Yes.
And that might have been
he would be absolutely correct by that.
That would be true. That would be true.
Absolutely.
We were very much I told you so.
Every piece of that comment.
So we were waiting for you.
But Jared said, and he called him, this is what he said. Y'all can look on our YouTube page. He said, as a lonely single man, I feel you guys should have had the perspective of a lonely single man. Absolutely right. I couldn't even argue with it.
Right. We agree.
So let's go. Let's talk.
And so that's why Jared. So welcome our lonely single man.
What's up?
Thank you so much for being a listener and joining us today. So we're going to give you the floor. You could just start with your initial thoughts and we'll go from there.
Right.
Either about the article or what we said about the article.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, I kind of want to keep the focus on the article because, I mean, that's what it is. I mean, like your reactions are your reactions, right? Like you don't have to apologize for that. But I think that, for a guy with a PhD, I'm assuming that's what a PsyD is. Like, I'm not familiar with that particular designation or whatever, but or I guess doctor of psychology, I guess, right? Mm-hmm. So, he says, okay, well, 62% of men are on dating apps. He goes on, and I think his point is mostly relating to the people that he has on his show, who obviously are giving their side of what happened, right? And that's not to say that like men don't need access to mental health or need to appreciate mental health, because obviously they do. Like, there's a reason why that science exists, and it's helpful in getting people to a point where they can articulate themselves and their feelings, right? But it's just such a hop, skip, and a jump from the 62% of men are on dating apps, therefore single men as a whole are lonely and lack the skill set. I don't think that's representative of everybody. Like, I know good quality dudes. I think, most of the time I'm a good quality dude. Like, I'm not perfect. I have plenty of things to work on, but some of these deficits that are highlighted in the article and what you guys spent quite a bit of time talking about last week, I don't think that's the case. Like, and it might be the case with the men that you've experienced, which, obviously that's what it is. But to paint everyone with a whole broad brush, I think is the biggest part of the problem, because men definitely do it too. There's a post today on Facebook circulating where a woman basically said there are three types of men. There's the unattractive but nice man, there is the charming but hoe man, and then there's the what was the other one? I forget the other one, right? But basically there are three categories of men. None of them are, fit, the bill. And of course, they're triggered people on both sides, and it's a big argument. But I'm just really tired of fighting the gender wars, right? Like, we're not going to get anywhere belittling one another or holding up examples of poor behavior on one side or the other and saying, "Oh, well, this applies to all y'all." Like, no, that person's crazy, or that person made a mistake, or whatever, right? Because ultimately, and I could, speaking from a man's perspective, dating is just as hard for us as it is for y'all. That we don't face the same issues, obviously, because we're typically looking for different things. But if I told you guys the stories of what's transpired in my dating life since I've been single, which is year and a half plus now, you'd be floored. Grown women, standing it up. A girl who wanted me to take her to Paris on the first date. It was like dead serious. I've been stalked in the last year and a half. Like those are like surface stories, right? But get anywhere, it's like one of the blind leading the blind. Why don't we just try to, hear one another out, have productive conversation, and see if we can figure this out? Because, the finger pointing and the name calling, and it's hurtful. Like some of the things that some of these dudes are saying, they're wilding, right? There's no place for that, right? But we get that in return from you guys too. And I don't think that women generally have an appreciation for what all goes into a man's decision to pursue you, and what we have to do. Sometimes it's like, playing hopscotch blindfolded and drunk with earmuffs. Like, you don't have your senses, you can't see, you're just trying to figure it out. Everybody's kind of looking for fumbling around in the dark for the light switch. So that was just my general thoughts on it.
Well, thank you for that. I think we agreed on the episode last week about that 62% number not really being an indicator of any true metric, because just because it's 62% of men on a dating app, we realize a lot of them aren't even single. So we really didn't give a lot of energy to that 62% thing. We focus more on historically, and it still is a broad stroke, right? But historically, young boys are not taught or encouraged to be in touch with their emotions or have a high emotional intelligence. And we see this perpetuated, and I've complained about sitcoms, or even as single women talking to married women, we can say, "Oh, he forgot my birthday." And the married woman says, "Oh, girl, that ain't nothing. My man ain't remembered my birthday in 16 years. So the conditioning in this society is that we should not look for men to have the emotional bandwidth or intelligence as a girl, as a woman, right? And I think that's what the article was mostly focused on, is we're now not settling for not being evenly yoked in that way just for the sake of being in a relationship. We would prefer to have men that were a little bit more emotionally evolved and communicative. It didn't mention anything about finances, because a lot of times men say, "Oh, well, women want you to pay." That wasn't in the article, and no one was talking about that on that particular article. But I totally receive, this. I hate the gender wars too, and I feel like so much of it is counterproductive. We try to, on this podcast, we talk about our own experiences, but we also talk about how our minds have changed, or how we've grown, or what we learned from different scenarios, our responsibilities, and our part in the failure of some of these situations. But also with that, we can only speak of the experience, right? And so what I oftentimes tell men is, when we're talking about this thing and I tell them about different situations, and I say I would never make these comments based on only my experience. It's friends, it's what I consume online, it's an overall general experience right now in dating. And a man will usually say, "Well, I know what I'm talking about because I am a man." When I say, "But we date men and it's different." And it's very similar to when a man says, "Well, I'm a man, so I know what I'm talking about," but you've never experienced a man. And so I don't have children, right? But I can tell a mother, because I've been a child, how to be a mother. And it's like, no, just because you've been a child doesn't mean you know what it's like to be a mother, right?
Right.
And the same for a man, Helen, and the same for a man and your experiences with women. We can't argue with you about your experiences of women. We can say, "Well, I've never done that," but I can't tell you that that's never happened. And a lot of times that's where the pushback comes, because men want to tell you you picked all the wrong ones, and all your friends have picked all the wrong ones, and everybody in the country has picked the wrong one, versus, hey, this might be a deficit on the part of the group.
That's fair. And like, men are by no standard perfect, collectively or individually, right?
I also wanted to say something about that. You said that you're not perfect. That's a default that most men will offer when nobody on the planet is perfect and no one's looking for perfect. We're looking for integrity. And I think a lot of times men harp on, no, I'm not perfect, or nobody's perfect, or no, men aren't perfect. And that's nothing any woman has ever asked for or expected or required.
Would you say, Jared, when you hear women talk about men in certain discussions, whether it's gender wars or something about relationships, would you say that that's what you hear as a man when women complain about men, is that they're looking for perfection? Is that what you hear, even if they don't say it out loud?
No, and I hope that what I'm saying is it kind of intimating that. But when I say that we're not perfect, what I'm saying is that we understand that there's work to do, right? Like, you're never a finished package until you're dead. So every day is an opportunity to work on improving yourself in whatever aspect it is, whether it's physically, financially, spiritually, whatever. So the standard shouldn't be, perfection, but that should kind of be a goal. And I think sometimes people get complacent, in pursuit of that. It just, the whole take me as I am thing, like, yeah, but no, right? Like, if you've got deficits of any kind, I don't care what they are, you need to be working on addressing them. If you've got the ability to do so, which I can't imagine something that you can't work on. So I don't think women want perfection, but I do think that women take for granted the calculus that goes in. You say you want these things, but does that really line up with your actions on a consistent enough basis to where you feel like that's accurate? Like, for you personally, that might be true, right? I would venture to say that in real life, when people are making decisions, that they're not as, holding themselves to that same standard, right? And that applies across the board. Like, man, woman, whatever you're interested in, you should be able to be about what you talk about.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I was going to say. It's not perfection. We're looking for integrity. And I do believe that you should be prepared to receive what you give. And as a listener of the podcast, you know that we've called ourselves on our things of, I might have been, okay, that might have been on me. Or, okay, I'll take that mulligan on that one. But I think one of the challenges that men don't suffer from, that women do suffer from in dating men, and I think this is a generalization and it's true, is men very often do not engage with women as people. They engage with women as a subset of a human. And men respect men. Men tend to be honest with men. It is what it is. They tend to be a little bit more accountable to men than they are to women. And so that's a tremendous deficit in the dating. Men have challenges finding a great woman, and women aren't perfect and all those things. But an overreaching, a broad stroke is that men have a hard time perceiving women as people.
I can agree with that.
And so that puts us in a little bit more of a hole from hello.
Right, but to me, right, the answer to that is to not accept that, which I think women are doing more of, in terms of like you said, like an example, like where somebody's husband forgot their birthday. Like, how trash is that? Like, if you're not being treated like a human being, don't accept it. But it's hard to reconcile that sometimes with what we see from the choices that women make dating wise, right? Like, you want integrity, but you're with this guy, right? He doesn't seem very, very much about that integrity life, right? And that's not to say that you don't have the right to make your own choices, but again, where you're looking for integrity, I think a lot of men are looking for consistency, and they're not necessarily seeing it now, or what you can see from the outside looking in. right? So when you've got all of these stories about how you've been treated or how you've been disrespected, the answer is to walk away from that. And hopefully more women do, and hopefully more men understand that why that happened and work.
But I think that's 100% the point of the article. That's what the article, I think, was saying, is women are looking to be treated better and are choosing to be single and not date men who don't know how to treat them with respect.
Well, I mean, I don't think that the article goes that far. I think the article is really kind of relying on the guy's experiences talking to women online, which, not to invalidate that, but I think
I think that was just one of the
say that one more time.
I think the online piece was just one of the metrics. The other metrics were communication and emotional intelligence. And so the metric of dating online, the article wasn't just about dating online. That was just one of the metrics they looked at to say there was a rise in the number, which we don't agree with that number.
I'm not even talking about the online dating thing. I'm talking about the dating apps. He hosts a show on TikTok where he kind of, I guess, like Kevin Samuels, but without the cruelty. And he says he's talking to women 25 to 45. And they say, that's the comment that they bring up repeatedly, which, again, not to invalidate those women's experiences, but you're hearing one side of the story, and B, you're only hearing people who would call into a dating show. Like, if everything's cool, you're not going to call into the dating show and be like, hey, everything's cool. I just wanted to let you know.
But let's say even beyond the dating show or online dating, definitely, I think, I've mentioned before on the podcast about if you look at any sitcom, most of those writers are men and traditionally have been men. And the story is still the man is the irresponsible, emotionally unattached person. And it's so funny, he forgot the anniversary, he bought a vacuum, for her birthday, he didn't take care of the kids, he went golfing instead of doing the doctor's appointment, and these are men writing these stories, right. Sometimes based on their own lives and experiences, but also the expectation for men to be fully emotionally present is not really there for the society, right?
Right, but again, the answer to that is to not accept that conduct. And
that was the point of the article. That was the point of the article. Fewer women are accepting that kind of conduct. Back in the day, you had to have a man, regardless of how he treated you, in order to move through society. Women couldn't purchase property, couldn't get education, couldn't get a credit card, couldn't get a bank account. So you had to hitch your wagon to some man, regardless of if he was a good man or not, to make it in life.
Well, that's what I got from the article as well. That women are no longer settling, because I think that's the biggest thing that we hear from men is like, well, why would you put up with that? Why would you deal with that? So for someone from the outside, not in my sphere, to say, hey, this is what's happening. Men are growing up and being lonely and single, and they're not happy about it because women aren't settling anymore. I celebrate those women. I'm not going to settle for this anymore. I don't need to depend on this anymore. And that's why that article spoke so loudly to me. Because it was like, at one point, our grandparents and our parents, they did settle.
And they didn't even look at it as settling. It's just what they knew to do. Right.
That's what we see in hindsight as a settling moment. Yeah. But
it's just the way the world was, and the world is forever evolving. And I think emotional connectivity is more important now for this generation than it used to be. A lot of our grandparents never spoke to each other. Granddaddy went to work, food was on the table, grandma raised the kids, and so we're seeing a quest for more connectivity on all levels. People want to be more connected to their jobs, to their careers. It used to be you work 40 years at the plant and go sit down somewhere. You ain't supposed to be fulfilled at your job. So it's an evolution, I think, of society in wanting more of a connection to life, right? Wanting more connection out of the experience. And so people aren't just staying at jobs that they hate because our parents and grandparents did it, right? And people
it's a job.
Right. And people aren't getting into and staying into relationships that aren't fulfilling like our parents and grandparents may have done. So I think it's just a shift. And I think the article spoke to, hey, fellas, you might want to figure out some emotional intelligence and learn how to kind of communicate more. Women are requiring more. as far as we're not going to just accept that you sit there and don't talk. We're not going to accept that you treat us poorly. We're not going to accept that. And that's great. That's all great news for everybody, because it's a chance for men to really evolve as humans. And it's a chance for women to get the love they give, which would be great for everyone, right? I think that's a win for everybody.
Well, yeah, everyone deserves, some measure of happiness, whatever that looks like for them. And I'm not against that. I just think that the the author of the article, excuse me, kind of, like, he's making the right point in terms of men developing emotional intelligence is a good thing. It is something that we should encourage. But it's, I think that it's a leap to kind of say that, the rise of the single only man, like this is what it's going to be, like this is your future, right? Which kind of got into some of the things you guys talked about last week in terms of like projecting. Like, men are afraid of absolutely being alone. Like, I don't want to be alone.
Mm-hmm.
I want a family. I want to be a dad. I want those things, right? But I understand that I want those things, and I can articulate that whenever I'm in a romantic / whatever type setting, right? So I think the other part of it is, because men, like you said earlier, have been conditioned like this. Sure, therapy is going to help, but we've got to get out of the mindset of what got us here in the first place, which was accepting that men don't do that, or men not having a space to express themselves, right? And figure out, what it is to have feelings and talk to people about them and whatnot. So, there's that aspect of it too. Like, if you've never been encouraged or supported when you bring oh, I'm sad today, it's raining outside, whatever, right? And you get shunned or you get made fun of, the response, especially from a man's perspective, is just to shut down and just, do whatever, go to work, go home.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's really dismissive to discount that. Like, oh, just go to therapy. Like, therapy is a relatively new thing, especially like within the Black community. Right? Like 20 years ago, we weren't going to therapy for real. Like, people got laughed at for it. I remember once I went to a therapy session when I was in law school, and it showed up on my insurance because I was still on my parents' insurance. And like, they joked with me a little bit about it, like not in a, evil way, but like, it wasn't, wow, son, I'm glad that you're taking your mental health seriously. It was, what you got to go to therapy for. You know what I mean? So we've got to encourage that and not weaponize that against men. And I know a lot of men who say when they open up and they share their feelings or whatever, or they cry or want to cry, that it gets weaponized against them and it makes them shut down, right? And that's that's the whole point, like making somebody shut down. And that's when you get some of the the stuff that you guys have mentioned.
Mm-hmm. I've heard men say that.
Oh, 100%.
So I absolutely believe that is the case, and that's what they feel.
And let me say about parents in therapy. I have several friends in therapy, and their parents are annoyed by it because they're understanding childhood traumas and trying to learn new behaviors, and the parents are taking it personally, like, oh, so you go to this therapist to tell you I messed you up, And I think that's a generational shift, right? And so at the end of the day, we all still have to be responsible for our own healing. And I think, therapy is now not a bad word. And historically in our community, even society as a whole, talking about mental health didn't used to be a thing, but again, it's all about evolving, and saying, okay, well, this has shifted. So I have a real question for you, and it's going to require, I believe you've been very honest and transparent, so thank you. But this is going to require next level honesty, okay?
I accept your challenge.
2-part question. 1, do you think the way you approach dating, the way you think about relationships is the norm for men? And two, for men you encounter who think in the way that you've mentioned is not a positive way, do you hold them accountable for things they may say or share in that space?
Yes and yes. I get, I'm probably more emo slash sensitive than the average bear. Even like amongst my friends or, with guys that I'm cool with or whatever, but we talk pretty honestly, or they at least know to expect me to talk honestly about, what I think, especially if they ask me for my opinion, right? So, I encourage my friends to do whatever they got to do to uh, find strength in their own voice, because I believe that's important. So, especially like my brothers, like like my homies, we don't do like the emotional clamming up, right? So, like of my best friends, within that circle, two of them married, the other guy's a single man like me, and within that circle, we're very honest with one another when we see somebody, messing up, especially in the context of a relationship or romantic dealings. We speak on it pretty frankly, sometimes pretty disrespectfully, but it's always funny and it's always from a place of love. And I try to carry that out in my dealings with people that I don't know as well, right? Because like there's a certain line when men talk to one another that not to cross unless you're ready to square up. So you can't just go off like why are you acting like blah 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 whatever. But usually there's a respectful way to approach man and say like, hey man, like you're wilding, or what's going on, that kind of thing. So yeah.
I don't know if that's your opinion and that is based on your experience. And I do not believe
I probably talk to more men than you do. Like I think
I do not believe it. I don't believe that you think that you are the norm.
Well, I'm just a guy.
Okay, but do you think you are the norm?
I speak the language, right?
Do you think you are the norm?
Well, he said he was more emo and more
like.
But he said he's even more sensitive than the norm. But I'm saying baseline. You feel like most men. You're like most men. Most men are like you.
Right. I'm capable of the same. Like I'm not doing anything special. They do it in their own ways. Like it may not sound like it sounds coming from me, but I think men do. Like now, are they good at it? Are they consistent at it? No, but I don't think I think that much differently than your average guy.
Well, and I think this is where we will agree. They are not good at it or consistent, so that's all we have to go on. So, what are we drawing from if it's not them being good at something or being consistent at something?
What we're drawing from is that they make attempts, right? And it's it's a decision time at that point. Am I going to positively reinforce this, or am I going to, respond in a way that says to the man, whether you intend for it or not, maybe I shouldn't be this open. Maybe I shouldn't talk that. Like a lot of times, like I get criticized like for being open sometimes, right? Because sometimes the situation I'm called for it, right? But I tend to speak my mind, right?
Oh, we saw your comment on our page. We know you do. That's why you here. We know you do.
So sometimes men feel like they got to pick their spots, right? Like I'm a little more reckless with it. But again, to go back to what we were talking about before, where the people that raised us, right, our parents generally. I mean, like, so you might be a little bit older than me, Robin, you might be a little younger than me. I'm going to be 40 in a couple months, right? But that generation didn't believe in therapy. It was a bad word. Didn't believe in mental health. Didn't talk about these things, whatever. Those are the people that raised us, right? That's who we know. That's mom. That's dad, right? And so you're expecting people to make this fundamental shift at the same rate that you did, right? And that's not reasonable. Like people, like the shirt says, Black men are human. Like people are going to progress on it on different scales. It's not that they're 100% wholly averse to it. It's that they're on a different path in terms of that. Some may never get there. A lot may never get there. But I think that men in general understand that they need to, find their voice and be comfortable speaking in it, and stand on it. Now, like I said, sometimes they're not good at it. Sometimes they're not consistent at it. And I understand you're looking for someone who's good at it, someone who's consistent at it.
That's it. And I will say, I
reinforce
agree.
those behaviors. Don't discourage men when they try.
Listen, I give a man a safe place to get away from here daily.
She does.
Safest place you can get away from. But let me say, I agree about the timeline. I say the same thing with girlfriends of mine who have new awakenings or epiphanies, and it's for everybody to get. I've had people say, oh, if I had known this then. I'm like, you get it when you're supposed to get it. Like, I don't mourn any time doing something that's crazy now. I mean, I'm building a time machine to go back in time and kick my ass about some things, but that it was what it was, and it served its purpose for that time. The disappointment comes in, like, as you so eloquently mentioned, I am older than you. And the men I date tend to be my age or older. It's disappointing and disheartening that they haven't gotten there at this point, because we know we only got about 20, 30 summers left, right? And so hopefully, as you have been matriculating on this particular rock, that you start learning some things and say, that really ain't serving me well. Or, you know what, I see what this person is doing. Let me see, can I incorporate that in my life? And some of it's going to stick, some of it's not. But at some point, regardless of who raised you, how you were raised, at some point, you have got to take responsibility for how you are showing up in the world and for the experience you are having. That's a very personal, individual thing. There's not a certain time it's going to happen by. The hope and the wish is that by the time you're 50.
Well, but I mean, I would say that you're being somewhat unreasonable with that position with somebody that's over the age of 50, right? Like, not that they don't see that or feel that. It's just that that's a completely different world. Like, that just wasn't a thing. And you're not going to wake up at, 45, 50 and say, hey, you know what? That whole thing I've been living my life by, I'm just going to, that's not working for me anymore. I'm going to go do X, Y, Z. Like, the older you get, the less you tend to change.
Well, that's why this podcast has been disheartening in ways for us. When we started 4 years ago, I still had the hope of getting married, having kids, living happily ever after. 4 years later, I still want that. Don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. There's still desires, but I'm not at my ripe age of 38 now. I'm not going to compromise. I'm not going to sacrifice my joy just to get married to somebody and have a baby and blah blah blah. And because I feel like I'll speak for me. I feel like I've missed a huge chunk of that window of growing together with someone. I have friends that have been married or got married in their 20s, and they were able to grow with their spouses. And they will say, if I had met him met him later in life, we may not have been able to make that connection. So I have to face the reality of I may not be able to find a connection like that because I can't.
Like you said, we are who we are, men and women. Yeah. We are who we are as we get older, right?
Yeah, and I make no apologies for that. It is disheartening. It's not the best thing to think about, but I'm still going to make this life the best life I can. And if that means that I will never get married, then then so be it. I'm not going to be distraught about it.
Well, I think there's space to feel the disappointment, because I feel that same disappointment. Like I said, out of my friend circle, 2 of my friends are married and on kid number 3. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to be, 60 with a stroller at my kid's high school graduation if I meet their mama tomorrow. And I don't think I've met my children's mother yet. So you can recognize that, but it's like, well, what do you do next? Like, you're gonna roll up in a ball and die. Like, no, you're gonna go find.
Exactly not. And that's what we talk about. We talk about the realities of it, right? And it's disheartening and unfortunate, and we're all getting bigger ages. And so the idea we may have had 10 years ago is different than the idea today. But I think the point of the article was why there is a widening disconnect, right? There's always been some kind of disconnect, but it's getting wider based on we are all getting older. And if we're not making these changes for ourselves, I would not tell nobody to change themselves to get a partner or try to be like this to get a partner, right? At some point, we have to see, hey, this does not serve me well. You know, this is not helping me. Me and my sugar and drinking my sugar, whatever, this is not serving me well. I can't give up sugar because then I'm going to find the love of my life if I drop 50 pounds. I'm going to be someone still addicted to sugar. So I think the whole thing about men, emotional intelligence, emotional bandwidth is for them to have, I think men get shortchanged of a well-lived experience because of not being able to access that for themselves, not to even be in a partnership. You know, so many men are limited creatively because of what they've been told is gay or effeminate for them to express from childhood, right? From society. Yeah. And so there's so many limitations that have been put on men by everywhere and everything that I don't think a lot of men get a chance to have a full experience of being a human.
Right. Well, but the fact that you understand that, but at the same time, you're not giving them the space to be human.
I'm giving everybody space. Everybody got all the space to do what they're going to do. I'm saying it's disheartening that as we get older, and guess what? These folks that had 50 plus years to find joy for themselves. It's disheartening that as I get older and every day I'm trying to find a new way to be a better version of myself for me to enjoy myself, right? It's disheartening when men are displaying the same behavior they displayed as a 12-year-old on the playground. And it's like, I know you've lived a lot of life. I know you've had a lot of experiences. I know you've met a lot of people. You can't still be this 12-year-old. It formed a lot of your opinions. It was a core memory and experience. But at 50, you can't be presenting as the 12-year-old on the playground for yourself.
I don't disagree.
So I don't have nobody on the timeline. Everybody has the freedom. I'm just saying it's disheartening when you keep running into people who are their 12-year-old selves. Any of us, man, woman, or child. I don't like immature women either, you know? So I'm saying I don't like anybody who does not give themselves the advantage of growing up, the advantage of saying, hey, I never saw that before, or that wasn't a part of my childhood and I've experienced it and I liked it and I'm gonna see if I can make it work for me. It seems like I would enjoy it, you know? And I think that's just living a full life, taking in what you're experiencing from different people, different cultures, different countries, cities, co-workers, friends, classmates, to be a person that, you know, is a little bit more well-rounded than this is how I was raised. This is what I know. And even though I'm not having a wonderful experience by my own admission, this is just what it is. But I want to shift for just a second because I don't want us to run out of time. And I really do appreciate you joining us. As a lonely single man, we need to see if we can help you out. We have a lot of women that listen.
Okay.
So we need to hear the deets, the stats. This is your moment. I think you have expressed yourself very lovely and wonderfully, and thank you again for being a part of this. Mm-hmm. But let's just say right now we were shifting and saying, all right, Jared, there's a whole lot of single women looking at you right now. What would we get with Jared? Who are you? What are you? You didn't mention that you're younger than me. Other than that,
I did not mean offense by that. Clearly,
I don't take any offense. I'm joking.
Nothing wrong.
Who are you?
I'm a country boy from Florence, Alabama. I went to FAM for undergrad. I went to law school at Bama. I'm in digital marketing. I live in Birmingham. I'm a nerd. I still play video games. Big football fan. I cook. I'm occasionally funny. Occasionally. I'm a big fan of a good story. So whether that's a book, whether that's, you know, a TV show like House of the Dragon last night was awesome.
Yeah, my nerd friends have been nerding out on that all Facebook.
I've been seeing a lot of nerds online.
Yeah, I mean, the countdown was on.
Yeah, but yeah, nerd gang through and through. But I might kick it a little bit. I might have a drink or two. I got a little bit of an edge to me, but overall, I'm looking for the same things that most people are. Like you want a safe place, and you don't want to do it alone.
And so what is it in more detail that you're looking for? Because some people, it will be able to self-identify. Maybe they would reach out. So what is it that you're looking for?
All right. So here are my requirements. Number one.
Requirements. Requirements.
You gotta have standards. Have standards. Don't be
asking for specifics. And
I got standards.
I
Don't
guess
be sending just anybody over my way.
Yeah, preferences sound different than requirements, but go on.
Okay, well, I use the word requirements. I believe in the power of words. You got to be born a woman. That's important.
Okay.
I've seen some things in the streets. No disrespect, but it's not for me. You got to be Black. I've never dated non-Black women. They're not for me. You got to be a Christian. And, beyond that, I'm willing to, get to know you as you get to know me. I've been up and down the skin tone, the body shape, whatever. If I like it, I like it, and I'm gonna tell you. So I don't have like a type beyond that, but I do think that it's important for any woman that I date. Like, this is talking about me. Because I have a lot of friends, and I have a lot of female friends, and that has been a point of contention in almost every one of my relationships, as an adult or, in school or whatever. Like, I'm not going to apologize for the fact that I liked women before I met whoever it is that I'm going to ultimately marry, Lord willing.
Can I ask a question about that?
Of course you can.
If it is a recurring theme that is a deterrent for a successful romantic relationship, have you thought about how the friendships are being introduced? Have you thought about the nature of the friendships? Most women understand that people have met people. Women have guy friends, but you would have a challenge with certain guy friends based on certain interactions and introductions. Have you taken that into consideration in how
Absolutely.
you manage that?
I'd be an idiot not to, right? Like, now, my approach to these things has evolved over the years, right? Like, I've learned things, and this is something you should be upfront about. This is something you should not be, what I should say, not, well, yeah, that's what I mean. Like, there are certain things that you should disclose. There are certain ways that you need to go about it. You need to make sure that, if you've got a woman in your life, that everyone knows she's the woman in your life, right? Like, this is, the queen, right? How you interact, right? Like, so, like, you can't be, and not that this even happens, but like, let's say, like I have a female friend and she's over at my house at like 10 o'clock at night, right? Like, I know that's probably a problem if it's just a one-on-one thing and I got a girl, unless, whatever, right? That kind of thing. How my female friends treat my woman, right? Like, I've learned a lot of lessons over the years about how to check that, like catty or disrespectful behavior on the friendship side of it. Like, where, like, hey, like, look, this is what I'm doing. I'm gonna need you to chill. I'm gonna need you to respect her. Can you do that out of our friendship? Because in the past, I've been bad about asking for that. And I think that, it cost me, right? So go back to your answer. Yeah, I'm learning, but I don't have all the answers to it yet.
Okay. That was an okay answer. Okay. You want children. So a woman that might think she's a candidate would have to be open to having children with you. Are you open to her already having had children?
Yeah, my ex had a kid, and it was yeah, I love the kid. I love the kid to this day,
Okay. But you would be looking to have more kids with this woman as well, right?
Ideally, yes, but like at the same time, I understand that it might. I'm not going to let that be a deal breaker.
Okay.
This is all very good information for our female listeners.
Right. I'm sure they're all switching because most of our listeners listen to us. They don't watch YouTube.
They're gonna be
probably
on
all
YouTube
switching to
this
YouTube
episode. Yeah, at this point, they
sounds
turned
like
off the
majority of our
podcast and
audience.
gone to YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay. Robin, do you have any other questions you need to ask him about if we scouting?
No, I think we covered. I think he covered everything. You know, that's enough to create a connection. You know.
And what's the best way for someone to reach Jared if they were going to reach out to you? Because we don't want to be blocking, and if somebody in our inbox and we don't see it, we ain't trying to keep no connections from happening. So
you don't want to. You don't want to receive the 6 messages.
We don't want no parts of it. We don't want no parts of it.
You know, hard times. I'm on Facebook, Jared Tyus. It's JARRETT Tyus, TYUS. My DMs are wide open for business.
Oh.
What brought you to our podcast as a listener?
I don't know. It just came up in the algorithm, because you guys are local, and I believe that it's important to support people. Whether or not like you, because I like I said, like I've met you guys, but like it's not like we hang out. Right. So
I think we have some mutual friends or acquaintances too. So.
Right. Yeah. Like you're a Delta, right, Robin? So I know.
Yeah, I know some of your friends. Probably some of the female friends you were talking about. Yeah, I know them.
Wow.
No. I didn't mean that in a mean way.
But we already know the female friends are a problem, so I took it as a mean way because.
No, I didn't know. No, because I love.
No, they a problem because of him, not because of them. Because of him, he's already.
Oh. No, but I do. Yeah, we know. Yeah, I know something. Right.
So, I completely.
No, I'm always curious about how people find us, and then especially as a man.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, it popped up, and then I was just like, I'll watch the show. I don't now. I hope you don't think that I like hate watch it. I don't but I think that I learned a lot listening to women. It's probably where I got some of the quote unquote emotional intelligence, whatever that is, that I got is by listening to how women talk about, what they think and feel, even if I find it confusing and mystifying sometimes. Mm-hmm. So I've probably been watching for like a year now.
Oh, that's so great. Thank you. We have heard from couples that listen to us, even though we're singles and we're talking about dating and relationships. We've heard couples say that something they get out of our conversations is they're able to introduce topics and no one's defensive because it's not just like, hey, I need space. They're talking about the episode where we talked about needing space. And so it lends them into conversations that they can both be relaxed in how they share.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with it. That's dope. Because people definitely. I think that's one thing that causes a lot of relationships to fail is that people lose their autonomy, and it's just like we have to be this melted together thing at all times. And like, no, you're individuals. You have entire lives before you met. You're gonna have lives that are the incidents that are separate of or not within the context of you being somebody's boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife, right? Like you still got to be a human being in this world, in this country. And when you lose that individuality and you take that away from someone, they tend to get really resentful and bad things happen.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
I had slapped mute because my dog started barking. That's why
somebody
else talk. Well, Jared, we really do appreciate you. Seriously, we appreciate you being a listener. We appreciate your comment, and we agreed with you about having a male's perspective on that article is extremely useful. We've received everything you've said. It actually has been informative. It confirms some things we already kind of felt and knew, but also, it's always great to dialogue with each other. In a way that ultimately we all want connection. We all want to bring people together. And we do appreciate the way you've expressed yourself. Not like a man. And I'm messing with you.
See, that's really what I'm talking about. That right there.
But
you have
been
truth. It's true.
We can only speak from our experiences, and those experiences.
I was trying to think of a nicer way to say it.
Do you know how many men feel like nobody gives a damn about what they think or feel. Like it's you got that.
No, yeah.
We do know, yeah.
Where like you as a woman want that, and a man is like, why does anybody care what I feel? And we can't figure out how to. We pick the most destructive option out of the pile is to go in on one another instead of saying like, well, hey, why don't you just talk and I try not to beat you up over it and we figure it out.
At the end of the day, everybody's in survival mode. No one wants to get hurt. And so if you feel like some hurt coming, people are conditioned to, well, let me get out or let me hurt you first. And that's why the connections aren't happening. Everybody's afraid, right? Everybody's scared. If
everybody's afraid to take an L.
Right.
Man
everybody's afraid to get their heart broken. You know, it is what it is, right? And so hopefully the more that you are in touch with your emotions and your connectivity with everything, because we even talk about decentering romantic relationships. You know, it's about connectivity with everything in your life. Everything should be meaningful and purposeful on this trip, right? It lessens the fear, hopefully, you know, because one, you survived 100% of what you've been through. And hopefully at this point you can say, but that was an L. The great philosopher J.C. says, you learn more from your losses than your victories, you know, and you say, okay, I see how that didn't work and why it didn't work. And all I can be responsible for is my part in it, you know, and let me work on that for next time. So we do appreciate you, seriously. And thank you so much.
I appreciate the opportunity.
I don't know if we'll ever have you back. Because I feel like you want to disagree, but I think you agree with everything we said.
I don't know what I'm allowed to say and not say on here, so let me err on the side of caution and just say that I can separate the fact that men need to do better from, oh, y'all just lonely and single and y'all you need to get your ish together, right? Like I think that the former or I mean the latter doesn't have to get in the way of the former, right? Like we can encourage men to do the work to be more emotionally healthy, available, intelligent, whatever you want to call it. And at the same time, you know, just like women don't like being Kevin Samueled, we shouldn't be Kevin Samueling men on the issue of emotional intelligence. That's all I'm saying.
Kevin Samueling is a verb now.
Hey, it's you know.
No, I agree with you. And different women have a different bandwidth for emotional men. We've talked about it on the podcast before. I'm really good and open with an emotionally vulnerable dude.
We have different bandwidths. Yeah,
we have different.
And that's based on how I grew up and the men I grew up around between my brother and my father. You know, so there is some like it makes me a little uncomfortable sometimes. I will admit, and I've said that on the show. So right. So it is a learning curve. I've tried to embrace it and be better. That's all I can do.
But that's what I'm saying. All of us are products of our environments, right? So it's not just men learned how to be a certain way. We all learned gender roles, gender identity, you know, what isn't allowed from somebody. We all learned that information. So it's on everybody to grow up and have evolved feelings and thoughts. And for me, at the end of the day, I want to be treated like a human and not a woman. I want to be treated like, hey, this is how I would treat a human because I'm a human and this is how I would want someone to treat me. And that's not all I want. And whether we're dating or not, man, woman, or child, I just want to be treated respectfully as a human. And I return that, you know, in kind. And I think, you know, there's internal racism. There's women who are misogynistic, but it is a result of everything we've ever been taught and consumed. And I'm always talking about deprogramming. You know, you have to unlearn so much stuff to get to the root of who you possibly were born to be. But there's a lot you got to get rid of, you know?
Right. I'm just saying that, you know, everybody deserves the grace of context.
I can't let that be the last word, Jared.
I tried to get in there.
I thought you did. I was like, yes and no. Okay.
It's hard. We're in a bad space to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Right now.
Well, this is what I was going to say. What a lot of men don't realize, based on what men repeatedly say, most men will go to that, no, I'm not perfect. That's the default of you're not consistent and you don't have integrity. No one's looking for perfect. And the other part of that is men don't realize how much grace we give them to even not be together. Like, by the time we decide this isn't working, there has been so much grace extended because we want to be with you. So you didn't call back, you didn't show up, you didn't do what you said. And that's what the time machine is for, because we have extended grace. And by the time we say, you know what, this ain't gonna be the situation. So it's very rarely because of lack of grace that's extended. Very rare.
And my experience is mostly the opposite. Like, I don't experience what you represent. I shouldn't say represent, what you are in the terms of your dealings with men. I don't. Maybe I just pick wrong, or I have bad taste in women. I don't know. But like, on the whole, that's not my experience with women.
Mm-hmm. You might have been hanging on by a thread. You shouldn't have tested the wind. Hey,
what?
Know your footing.
He didn't think that Gus was gonna be.
Did he think that wind was gonna knock him on out? You might have just been hanging on. That ain't the time to test grace, friend. That ain't the time to test grace. Okay.
Okay. Well, like I said, we're all trying to figure it out.
I get frustrated. I get so frustrated when I have more than 2, more than 3, more than 4, more than 5, more than 6, more than 8, 9, 12 stories about the same person, right? When I can say, oh, and then it was this other time. At that point, I realized my grace wasn't respected.
Well,
it wasn't warranted. I was extending it to the wrong person. You know what I'm saying? But it's not for a lack of an extension of grace.
Okay. Well, I can and I apologize if I triggered you.
No. You triggered me at hello. No, I'm messing with you. No. I appreciate you. Thank you for being a listener. Encourage more of your wonderful, well-adjusted friends and your other single friend. Hey, you can put his stuff out there too. We ain't tripping. We might just set up a whole new first date for you and your well-adjusted friends.
Right. I think he might have an objection to that, but that's another story for another time.
Yeah, we would assume so. All right. Until next time. Thank you so much, Jared. Until next time. Oh, no, he didn't.
Yes, he did.
Peace.